Hey Tom, it's so nice to have you on the show today. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing just fine, and thank you so very much for being here. You say, I truly appreciate it. And Tom, oftentimes I love to thank my guest for,
Thank you.
yeah, beautiful, for two things, okay? And I do this so often because I feel like it is important that I do so. So, firstly, Tom, I want to thank you for investing in yourself. You see, you are on this platform right now because you invested in yourself. And oftentimes I love to make reference to the amazing mango tree. Say, some months back, I was on a particular road, and just by the roadside, there was this tall, unattractive mango tree. And I use the word unattractive because the mango tree's got no mangoes on it, and the leaves were all dry. I just walked past it and I went my way. But you see, Tom, just recently, I was on that same road. And this time around, a lot's changed about the mango tree. You see, the mango tree caught my attention pretty good from a distance. And immediately I got the urge to move so close to it, of which I did, and it wowed me. Because now the mango tree's got a lot of mangoes on it, beautiful green leaves and healthy branches. You see, it was a beautiful moment that day. I was really, really excited. Here is my point. The fact that you dedicated your time, energy, and resources to becoming an amazing person. You see, that alone has made it really impossible for me to say nope to you. And getting to read a little bit about you, I was excited about the things I saw, your journey, the impact your work is having. It's amazing. And here you are today, myself and the audience, we're about to benefit from the fruit of all that you've been doing. It's amazing. So thank you so very much, Tom, for investing in yourself, and thank you for being here. Truly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for seeing that and acknowledging that.
Beautiful. So let's get
It's really
started.
an honor to be here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. You see, I'm quite excited to have Tom on the show today for some reasons. Firstly, my interest in knowledge seeking. You see, I believe in order for one to transition from a terrible situation to that of a beautiful one, Tom, I believe it takes the application of knowledge. Not just knowledge, but the application of it. And you see, Tom, ever since I discovered that light in the Hebrew means knowledge, and darkness means ignorance. I've been so keen to knowledge seeking because I do not want to remain in the dark. So that's going to make our conversation today very, very important to me and even to the listeners. The second reason why I'm excited to have the amazing Tom on the show is for the sake of the listeners. You see, Tom, we live in an age where information is as abundant as grains of sand. We've got lots of information flying out there. So these folks trust me for quality, eye-opening, very important information, of which I'm totally convinced that our conversation is going to be insightful and impactful. So for that reason, Tom, let's get started with your introduction. Talk to us about your personal or professional journey. We are just so curious right now. We want to know how Tom got here. Then afterwards, I've gotten some beautiful questions for you. Okay, Tom, over to you.
Thanks, Elisha. Yeah, I'm so excited to be here, and uh, I hope I hope that what I have to share will be valuable for you personally, but and for your listeners as well. A little bit about me. I grew up in a world that didn't make sense to me. All these systems that humans have constructed, from education to politics to governance to finance, all of these systems that rule our life, from a very early age, they didn't make sense to me. And I grew up asking the question, how can we, like, what is the real truth and how can we do better? Like, I saw that we were destroying the planet and we were dividing each other and we were lonely and depressed, and I saw that from a very young age. But of course I was also part of that system, and so I ended up in my early adulthood quite depressed and quite alone. And what I discovered through my journey was that learning to spend time in the wilderness, sometimes alone, sometimes with a small group of people, I learned who I am through those experiences. And in a lot of ways, it's paradoxical, but I felt safety for the first time when I was clinging to the side of a rock face by my fingernails, because that was one of the first times in my life that I had fully chosen to do something. I had chosen to be there. I'd chosen exactly what risk I wanted to take. I'd chosen who I wanted to do it with. And something about that combination of pushing myself, challenging myself in a natural environment, there's some really potent magic that happens there. And that's what I do in my work nowadays. I take people who are very successful, most of them, who have created a lot within the systems that we live in, but on some level, it doesn't make sense to them either. On some level, they know they're here for more. And on some level, they're ready to step into their true purpose. I was at a talk the other day, and it was a gentleman who teaches about purpose. And he said, out of 8 billion people in the world, there are 5.1 billion people who believe they're here for a purpose and they don't know what that purpose is. So that's more than 2/3 of the population of the planet believes that they are here to fulfill some kind of purpose, whether that's a purpose from God or from the universe or whatever, it doesn't really matter. But without knowing what that purpose is, you're just wandering lost. And what I've discovered through working with all kinds of people from all different walks of life is that when you go into the mountains with intention, the mountain will teach you something that will change the way you live your life forever, because it will show you something about who you are. And what I love, especially with successful people who often are in their own little echo chamber where everyone's saying yes to them because they're worried about their jobs or they're worried about whatever, something. No one ever tells the truth to very successful people. And often they're very lonely and they get lost. They get trapped in their success. And what I love is getting out into the wilderness, away from the boardroom, away from the phone and the screen and the noise and the family and the business and all of that stuff, and just getting really quiet and allowing the forest, the river, the mountain to be in conversation where they can ask the question of themselves, who am I really? And it just blows my mind every time, the magic that people receive when they go into the mountains with intention to receive.
Amazing, Tom. Your words are very, very insightful. And you see, I used to wonder about, and I just used to live for basically just to survive. And I wasn't even concerned about causing change or impacting the world. I was just about, my life then was just about, feeding myself and family and looking good for myself, and that's all. And the more I try to get money, the more I try to be comfortable, the more impossible it gets. You see, and it got to the point where nothing was working. Then thank God for God, you see. He exposed me to these things you just said, making me understand it that my existence and several others, our existence became necessary because of the presence of a problem in this world that we were created to solve, that God foresaw, and that's why we are here. Just like you mentioned, and you said these stats that I've been looking for, and now you just shared it with me. You mentioned that 5.1 billion folks understand that they are born for a particular purpose, but they don't just know what it is. You see, that's really incredible. And what you're doing, it's amazing. So that's going to lead to the very first question. So why did you start the Altitude Institute?
That's a beautiful question. And I'll answer it actually by going back to what you just said. You said you grew up trying to be successful, trying to make money. And what you said that was so beautiful is the more you tried, the more impossible it became. And that, it made me think of the journey of initiation, right? And the initiation will choose you at some point if you don't choose it. And the way that shows up often, at least in Western society, is what we call a midlife crisis. Someone who's been working a job that they probably hate for their whole life, trying to get promoted, trying to earn more money, trying to get a bigger house, trying to live the American dream. And then they wake up at 45 or 50 and they go, what? I'm miserable. And we call it a midlife crisis because they start burning down their life, right? They quit their job and they buy a Lamborghini and whatever. But it's actually a midlife awakening. And we have the option to choose that path way before it gets to a crisis point. So that's why I do what I do, for two reasons that are adjacent to that. One, I don't want to see people spend their whole lives living someone else's life, serving someone else's purpose, and then wake up at 40, 50, 60 when their families left them and their kids hate them and their health, often these things happen when someone has a heart attack, right? Because they've eaten crappy food their whole life because they're in survival mode, like you said. I don't want to see people suffer through that. And like you said, the more successful someone gets, often the more impossible it becomes to be healthy and to be in your purpose. I work with so many founders who start their company with a vision for freedom, world benefit, solving problems. It starts from this incredible place, often from a place of real purpose. But then investors, shareholders, targets, employees, these things start eating away at the purpose. And it's like, yeah, the purpose is taking me over here, but the money's over here. And so decisions get made that take people further and further away from their integrity and from their true self. And every time you do that, your soul closes down just a little bit. Or your soul never closes down, but your access to your soul, your communication with your soul starts to wither, like a friendship that, if you don't speak to your friend from school for 10 years, it's going to be a kind of awkward conversation when you pick up the phone. And I see it so often with successful people who started with passion and purpose and vision and vigor and aliveness. And then they create the thing that they wanted to create, but it's lost all its meaning because they've been swayed in their decision-making by so many external forces. And again, the clarity that comes from taking time for yourself to be outside of the business and like alone with your being, not even thinking. Like what I do is not a process of thinking and figuring it out. And let's just take the boardroom into the woods, because that would probably be marginally beneficial, but it's actually to get out of your head completely. Forget who you are. Forget that you're the CEO of whatever. Forget that you're the CMO of whatever, and just be. And ultimately, the answer to your question of why did I start it is because I realized that whenever I have a big problem to solve, a big kind of existential challenge, a big, an answer that is eluding me, what I've learned is I need to go and spend 10 hours in the mountains, minimum. And what I've learned is that when I do that, even me, I go out there and the first 2, 3 hours, 4 hours, 5, 6 hours, sometimes I'm trying to figure out my problem. I'm thinking about it and I'm like, come on, mountain, where's my answer? Come on, God, where's my answer? And I notice myself getting frustrated and I wind myself up, right? Still. And then eventually I forget that that's what I'm supposed to be doing and I become present. And now I'm here in the mountain and then poof, the insight comes from nowhere, seemingly, right? As far as my human thinking, executive functioning brain is concerned, the answer just appears because it's in those moments of quiet that I can communicate with God. I can communicate with my soul. I can communicate with the universe. And I am open to receive the wisdom that was always there in the first place.
Amazing. You see, it's very, very interesting to listen to you speak because your words are really, really insightful and I love it. That's a great one. And I love your techniques too, your approach, like staying away from distraction, from noises and going into the wilderness. And why you mentioned that, the person that came to mind was Jesus, he was always in the wilderness, oftentimes. He withdraws himself to a lonely place and he stays there till morning time. That's a great one. So to bring this to an end, Tom, okay, I have just one more question to go. Alright. So, what advice do you have for successful but unfulfilled people?
It's a beautiful question. Just to your previous point, I love that you brought up Jesus. I have never been a religious person. And in fact, I say that I had my religion beaten out of me when I was at school. But as I've come into this work, I've developed a much more kind of nuanced relationship with spirituality. And one of the things that I've learned is that almost everything significant that happened in the Bible happened up a mountain. 10 Commandments, Cain and Abel, Noah's Ark, feeding of the 5,000, Moses and the burning bush, right? So many of these stories happened out in the wilderness, right? The parting of the Red Sea, right? All of these like metaphors that have just become part of life, right? Moses went up Mount Sinai and he had a conversation with God and came back with the 10 Commandments. He didn't go up there to get them, but he had this download, and that's what we've lost. All right. And so if you track what's happening in my response, I'm not thinking about my answer, but my answer is what I just shared with you, which is get out into the wilderness, create the time to go into a wild place, even if it's a city park, even if it's your garden, just go there and allow yourself to get quiet and be drawn to something. Maybe there's a beautiful oak tree in the park. Maybe you have access to a forest and there is a particular rock that calls you to sit on it. Maybe there is a viewpoint or a hill or a mountain that is calling you to climb it. Maybe there's a duck in the pond that for some reason you feel drawn to. Allow yourself to be drawn there and sit with it. Ask it, what would you have me hear? Open up the channel for insight to occur. And doing that is no different to what Moses did on Mount Sinai. We have a comfort crisis. And in fact, there's a book that's just come out called Comfort Crisis, where we're obsessed with material goods, material comfort, more stuff. And we think that the solution to our problems is adding more things in, right? It brings me back to the midlife crisis. If I add a Harley Davidson into my life, then my life will get better. And actually what we need is to remove. We need to remove some of the comforts, which then allow us to see and witness some of the beliefs that have shaped us. And in those moments where we get quiet, insight is revealed. So to summarize, my advice would be, number one, create the space for you to walk in the wildest place that you can, even if that's only your garden, and walk there with the intention to be quiet and to listen to the environment. And the wilder the place, the further away from human infrastructure and what we call civilization, the better. Are you still with me? Well, I have no idea if we're still live, but it seems like we've lost Elisha. So I guess I'll continue. Why is it important that we get away from the regularity of life? Our world is so noisy, not just physical noise of traffic and computer sounds and all the people walking around and all of that stuff, but it's noisy in that there's so much distraction. There's so many things pulling our attention. Emails that we need to send, laundry that we need to do, that conversation with my wife that didn't go so well, the client who needs the proposal that's late. There's so much just noise, is so loud that we cannot hear the quiet voice of soul, the quiet voice of God, the quiet voice of the universe, the quiet voice of source.
That's
And it
right.
takes practice to be able to hear that. When we're kids, that's all we hear. But as we grow up, we become conditioned to hear the noise all around us, and taking ourselves into these wild places, asking, what do I need to hear, opens up a different channel, a channel that is not affected by all the shoulds and the can'ts and the musts that we live our life by. A channel that is a pure connection to my higher self. And when you do that, you are very likely to receive an insight that comes from deep within you, that comes directly from God, that comes, like I said before, delivered straight out of nowhere. And then you have the choice to act on it or not. And often the truth is that the insight that you receive might be in complete contradiction to a lot of the ways that you live your life. And the question is, are you ready to say yes to your initiation? Initiation is a journey into authenticity, right? Initiation is a journey into who you really are and why you're really here. And you don't have to answer the call. So many people receive the call and say no. And that's okay. Sometimes we're not ready. And every time we say no to the call, we take one step closer to the call coming for us in a way that we can't say no to. When we have a heart attack, when our wife or husband leaves us and takes the kids, when the business collapses and fails, when the rug gets pulled out from beneath us and we have no option but to listen. Excuse me. So my invitation to you, if you are at the top of your game, whatever that might look like, and you're feeling discontent, you're feeling emptiness, you're feeling like you don't want to get up in the morning, you're feeling your relationships lack the depth and passion that they used to, if you're feeling like your business, your work, your job that used to drive you, that you used to be so passionate about, is just kind of meaningless and you don't want to be there, reach out to me. Or if not me, reach out to the wilderness. Because you are being called to something bigger. You are being called to something greater. You are being called to the truth of who you really are. Elisha, it's been such a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of your show. I really acknowledge who you are in the world and the powerful work that you're doing. And thank you for investing in yourself and investing in me and trusting me to be a guest on your show. Have a beautiful, wonderful day. I love you.
Beautiful, beautiful.